My name's Oleksiy Mikhailovich Hrytsenko, and I'm 34 years old, or at least, that's what my papers say. War ages you faster than time ever could. I'm a captain in the Ukrainian Armed Forces, 3rd Assault Brigade, and for the past 3 years, I've been living a life most people only see in nightmares. Mud caked to my boots, the stench of gunpowder and rot in my nose, the endless scream of artillery overhead, it's my normal now. But it wasn't always like this. Before the war, I was just a guy from a small village near Cherkasy, a mechanic with grease-stained hands and a quiet dream of a simple life. I had a wife, Olena, and 2 boys, Maxim and Taras. They were my world, my reason to wake up every morning. That feels like a lifetime ago. Olena and I met in 2012, at a village festival. She was 20, all sharp cheekbones and hazel eyes, dancing in a circle with her friends, her laughter cutting through the fiddle music. I was 23, awkward but determined, and I asked her to dance. She said yes, and that was it. 2 years later, we were married. Maxim came along, then Taras. We built a life in that little house with a sagging roof and a garden where Olena grew sunflowers taller than me. I'd fix tractors by day, come home to her cooking borscht, the boys tugging at my legs, begging for a story. It wasn't perfect, money was tight, the winters brutal, but it was ours. Then February 24, 2022, happened. I woke to the sound of explosions, distant but close enough to rattle the windows. Olena clutched my arm, her face pale, as the radio crackled with news: Russia had invaded. By noon, I was at the recruitment office, signing up without a second thought. I wasn't some patriot dreaming of glory, I just knew if I didn't fight, the war would come to my doorstep, to my boys. Olena begged me to stay, tears streaming down her face as she held Maxim, who didn't understand why Tato was leaving. Taras, barely 2, wailed in his crib. I knelt, kissed their foreheads, and promised I'd come back. Keep them safe, I told Olena, my voice breaking. I'll find you when it's over. She nodded, sobbing, and I walked out into the chaos. They sent me to Bakhmut first. If you've never heard of it, imagine hell with worse weather. The city was a skeleton by the time I got there, buildings gutted, streets cratered, the air thick with smoke and the buzz of drones. My unit was a mix of green recruits and grizzled vets, all of us thrown into the deep end. Day 1, I saw a kid, couldn't have been more than 19, take a sniper round to the chest. He dropped without a sound, blood pooling in the snow. I dragged him back, but he was gone before I could yell for a medic. That was my welcome. The days blurred into weeks, then months. We held trenches, stormed ruins, fell back under barrages that turned the ground to mush. I learned to sleep through shelling, to eat cold rations with shaking hands, to ignore the screams of the wounded when there was nothing I could do. My squad became my family: Petro, a wiry guy from Lviv with a dark sense of humor, Irina, our medic, who cursed like a sailor but patched us up with steady hands, Serhiy, the old-timer who'd fought in Donbass back in 14. We kept each other alive, shared cigarettes and stories, laughed when we could. But the losses piled up. Petro took shrapnel to the neck during a night raid, died choking on his own blood. Irina vanished when a drone hit our field hospital. Serhiy lasted longest, until a mine blew his legs off. I held his hand as he faded, his last words a rasped, "Tell my daughter I tried." Through it all, I clung to Olena and the boys. Her letters came sporadically, smudged and creased from the journey. "We're in Poland now," she wrote early on. "A refugee camp near Krakow. It's cold, but we're safe. Maxim asks when you're coming home. Later, Germany now. A little apartment. The boys are in school." I'd read them by flashlight, the paper trembling in my hands, her words a tether to sanity. Video calls were rare, signal was spotty, and she always looked tired, her eyes darting away. "It's hard here," she'd say. "But we're okay." I believed her. I had to. My brother, Dmitro, was with them. He's 2 years younger, broad-shouldered and cocky, with a limp from a soccer injury that kept him out of the draft. He'd always been the charming one, girls loved him, and he knew it. When Olena said she was leaving, I asked him to go too. Look after them, I said, gripping his arm. You're all they've got till I'm back. He grinned, that easy smile of his. Don't worry, Brait. I've got this. You just don't get yourself killed. I hugged him, grateful, and watched them drive off in our beat-up Lada, the boys waving from the back seat. The first year was a grind. I sent every penny I could. Soldier's pay is a pittance, maybe 20,000 hryvnias a month if you're lucky, and half that went to gear. I'd skip meals, trade favors, take extra patrols to scrape together more. Alena's updates were thin but steady. She'd found work cleaning hotels, Dmitro fixed cars for cash, the boys were adjusting. Maxim's learning German, she wrote once. Taras keeps drawing tanks, says they're for you. I'd smile, picturing them, and tuck the letters into my vest, close to my heart. But by year 2, things shifted. Her letters grew shorter, vaguer. We're managing, she'd write, no details, no warmth. Calls dropped off, once a month, then every other. She'd answer, rushed, her face half-lit on my cracked phone screen. Busy, she'd mutter. The boys are fine. How are you? I'd ramble about the front, desperate to connect, but she'd cut me off. Gotta go. Talk soon. Click. I told myself it was the strain, war tears at everyone, even those who run from it. She was alone, raising 2 kids in a strange country. I couldn't blame her for pulling away. Then the silence hit. 6 months ago, the letters stopped cold. No calls, no texts, nothing. I'd check my phone obsessively, the signal bar mocking me as it flickered in and out. Were they hurt? Lost? I wrote, emailed, even sent messages through a Red Cross contact. Silence. Panic clawed at me. I begged a friend, Andrei, who'd rotated out to Kiev, to dig around. He had a cousin in Germany, some cop in Munich. A week later, Andrei called. They're alive, he said, voice flat. In some town near Munich. That's all I got. Relief washed over me, but it was hollow. Why weren't they answering? I couldn't shake it. Nights in the bunker, I'd lie awake, the distant boom of artillery a lullaby, imagining worst-case scenarios, sickness, an accident, something worse. My CO noticed, pulled me aside. You're slipping, Hrtsenko, he barked. Get your head in the game or you're no use to us. I nodded, shoved it down, but the splinter grew, festering. Last month, I got leave, 10 days, my first break in 2 years. I was a mess, gaunt and hollow-eyed, my uniform hanging off me like a scarecrow's rags. I'd dreamed of this, seeing Olena's smile, hearing the boys' laughter, feeling like a man again, not just a cog in the war machine. I hitched rides across Ukraine, bribed a border guard with my last pack of smokes, and took a rattling bus into Germany. Every mile, my heart raced faster, picturing their faces. I found their address through Andrei's cousin, a dingy apartment block above a bakery in a sleepy Bavarian town. The smell of fresh bread hit me as I climbed the stairs, my legs shaking from exhaustion and nerves. I knocked, my knuckles raw against the peeling paint. The door creaked open, and there she was, Olena. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner, but those hazel eyes were unmistakable. For a split second, I smiled. Then I saw it, panic, raw and unguarded, flashing across her face. Oleksiy, she whispered, stepping back like I was a ghost. What are you doing here? Before I could speak, Maxim barreled out. Tato, he yelled, slamming into me, all elbows and knees, his grin missing a front tooth. Taras waddled after, chubby arms wrapping around my leg, babbling, Tato, Tato. I dropped to my knees, tears blurring my vision, pulling them close. They smelled of soap and crayons, alive and real. I buried my face in Maxim's hair, my chest aching with relief. But Olena didn't move. She stood frozen, her hands twisting her apron into knots. Then I heard it, boots on the floor, a familiar tread. Dmytro stepped into the hall, shirt unbuttoned, hair tousled, a beer in his hand. He stopped, eyes locking with mine, and the world tilted. What the fuck is this? I snarled, standing, the boys still clinging to me. Olek, wait, Olena stammered, but Dmytro cut her off. Don't bullshit him, he said, voice cold. He's not stupid. The air thickened, my pulse hammering in my ears. Explain, I said, low and dangerous. Olena crumpled, tears spilling. It just happened, she sobbed. I was so alone, Olek. You were gone, and I couldn't do it by myself. Dmytro was here, he helped, and then, she trailed off, choking on the words. And then what? I roared. You fucked my brother? Dmytro smirked, actually smirked. She needed someone, Brait. You weren't around. I lunged, fists swinging, but Maxim grabbed my arm. Tato, no, he cried, his voice small and scared. I froze, trembling, rage boiling over. Dmytro just stood there, daring me. Olena wailed, the boys started crying, and I couldn't breathe. I shoved past them, grabbed my pack, and stormed out, their sobs echoing behind me. I crashed at a hostel that night, a grimy room with a lumpy mattress and a flickering bulb. I didn't sleep, couldn't. My mind replayed it all, Olena's excuses, Dmytro's smug face, the boys caught in the middle. I wanted to go back, drag them home, beat the shit out of my brother until he begged. But what then? Tear the kids apart more? I punched the wall instead, knuckles bleeding, and drank cheap vodka from a corner store until I passed out. Back at the front, it got worse. 2 weeks later, a courier dropped off a packet, divorce papers, stamped by a German court. Olena had filed, claiming abandonment and emotional distress. Abandonment? I'd been fighting for our lives. She painted me as a deadbeat, a shell of a man who'd left them to fend for themselves. And the alimony demand, half my pay, 10,000 hryvnias a month, a fortune I didn't have. She'd told the judge I was unstable, a war-damaged drunk, spinning lies I couldn't disprove from a trench. I hired a lawyer, some overworked guy in Kiev, draining my savings. We fought it over Zoom, my connection cutting out as I pleaded my case. I've been at war. I shouted. She cheated with my brother. The judge, a stern German with a pinched face, didn't flinch. You're the father, he said. You provide. Case closed. Now, every month, my account's gutted, the money wired to Olena while I eat stale bread and patch my boots with duct tape. I'm back in the fight now, somewhere near Kupiansk. The war's louder, uglier, Russian drones swarm like flies, artillery pounds us day and night. My new squad's green, kids who flinch at every boom, and I'm the one they look to. But I'm breaking. I see Olena in the smoke, hear Dmytro's laugh in the wind, feel the boys slipping away. Maxim's last letter, scribbled, innocent, said, Uncle Dima took us to a fair. He's fun. Taras doesn't write, he's too young to know I'm still out here, bleeding for a family that's not mine anymore. The alimony notice sits in my pack, a crumpled weight. I pay for her to live with him, to play house while I dodge death. How do I keep going? The war outside's nothing compared to the one in my head. I don't know if I'll make it home, or if there's even a home left to fight for.